Good morning. And welcome to Shawnee Mission Unitarian Universalist Church. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. We extend an especially warm welcome to our visitors today. We invite you to stop by the greeter's desk in Fellowship Hall for information on Unitarian Universalism and this congregation. It's right through those doors. If you are joining us online, please click on the Get in Touch form link in the link below our video description. And now we invite everyone to turn and greet each other with elbows or to say hi in the chat. It is so good to be together. And now Reverend Rose has a few announcements.
Today is a big day for our church. We are rehearsing with some of our leadership for the reopening of our church after 19 months of online worship and fellowship. We have been anticipating this since the Sunday a year and a half ago when the church closed its doors. We do this with great anticipation and with great thoughtfulness. I am now going to tell you the most important things that you need to know about reopening. This won't take long, but it is important, so please listen up so we can get all of this communicated to all of the people who are visiting us online and are hoping to join us in person. First of all, we as a church must take strict safety measures to ensure the safety of each other and the most vulnerable persons in our care, the children who are not yet eligible to be vaccinated. Therefore, we are requiring proof of vaccine for all eligible people in order to come to worship and participate in in-person activities. We do understand that this creates barriers for adults who have chosen to not get vaccinated, but we extend our warmest welcome to you from the safety of your home. If you are having fears or doubts about getting the vaccine, I encourage you to get in touch with me, and I will connect you to health experts who can hopefully quell your fears, answer your questions, and support you in your decision that is based on the sound science that has been developed by the global scientific community to give your body the support it needs to survive the virus and not spread it to other people. Now, when you get here next Sunday, please prepare yourself for a check-in. To speed up the process, you may send a photo of your vaccination card in early, or you may bring your proof in your hand. Now, if you are like my wife and I, if you put those cards somewhere so safe that even you don't know where they are, you will need to get a new card. Please call your insurance company if you are fortunate enough to have insurance, or go to your state's database and fill out an application tomorrow. Or you can do as I did and call the pharmacy where you got vaccinated, and hopefully a nice older gentleman will answer the phone and fill out the cards while you're on the phone and put them in the mail that same day. 2 more pieces of COVID-related announcements. First, the children's program is opening with every precaution. The children will go directly to their classes in the RE hallway where no one may enter except teachers and volunteers for whom we have proof of vaccine. We do need RE volunteers because many of our regular volunteers are teachers in real life, and are worried about being around so many unvaccinated kids at school and bringing it to church. So if you have your proof by September 12th, please consider supporting the RE program. We're almost done. All humans above the age of 2 will wear a proper mask over their mouth and nose, and there will be no exceptions within the congregation. On the chancel, we will remove our masks to speak or perform music, but besides this, there is a zero tolerance policy around masking. And we will have social distancing and limited capacity, and you will get to come to church like these fine leaders today and spend your Sabbath in what is probably one of the lowest risk public spaces in the area. We know it's not no risk, but theologically, we do need to be together. Spiritually, in terms of mental health, we do need to gather. If you choose to stay home, we support you, but for many people in our community, it is time. It's as safe as we can make it, and it's a process that we will continue tweaking. We will see your beautiful faces sooner or later.
Each month, we as a community take time to reflect on a theme. The children do this in their classes, we do it here in worship, and in our small groups. This month, the theme is embracing possibility. When I think of what it means to be a people who embrace possibility, I think back to when we purchased and moved into this building. The initial cleaning, painting, repairing, moving in, and unpacking were done mostly by members of the congregation, and joyfully. It was truly a community effort, and you could feel the excitement in the air. So much space. It was like moving from a studio apartment to an Amazon warehouse. Real classrooms instead of repurposed livestock stables. Real parking lots instead of gravel and grass. And a real kitchen. At that time, I heard many people saying the same thing. Just imagine what we could do, the good we could do with all this space. And look what we've done so far. We've built a community garden. We've planted a prairie. We've created a giving grove. We've set up a successful food pantry and provided shelter for the homeless. We've installed a labyrinth for all to use and opened our church home to the community through the Hogwarts School of Magic and Fun and Green Guitar Folk House, and more. And the nice thing, the exciting thing, is that we're not done yet. Embrace the possibilities. Continue to embrace the possibilities. Just imagine how much more good we could do with all this space. Come, let us worship. We'll be performing hymn number 38, Morning Has Broken.
And before we start, just a little global announcement about singing. As you can tell, we're all wearing our masks, and technically, we are not allowed to sing quite yet. So in the meantime, we're just going to hum along. Just as if you were to hum your favorite song on the drive over here, or your favorite song in the shower, now that we're showering every day and it's not the pandemic anymore. So you have a lot of time to practice humming, okay? So be gentle with yourself and hum along with Morning Has Broken. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbirds have spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning. praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
As John Young comes forward to light our chalice, we invite you to join in the reading of our covenant, which is usually printed on the front of your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another.
Now is the time where we expand the caring love of our community, where we draw to heart and mind those in our midst who are suffering and those who feel the sweet relief of their burdens easing. Of course, there is so much joy in this world, but let us carve out this moment to take space for our frustrations and sadness, for our hearts are heavy and have been heavy. Today, we think of our healthcare workers who are in crisis once more, returning to work overtime in hospitals with beds overflowing with people who have been given misinformation about the vaccine. We keep our doctors, nurses, techs, cleaning staff, chaplains, and everyone else in our hospitals in our hearts. Give them strength, offer them rest and peace of mind, laughter and humor in their daily work lives, and we ask them to please reach out if they find themselves at the end of a rope. We think of our healthcare workers in other countries who do not have the privilege of access to the vaccine, who continue to take great personal risk to care for their people. We are relieved that so many communities globally are somehow still managing the virus better than our country, even without access to vaccines. We send our hearts to the women of Afghanistan, many of whom are living in panic and fear, to parents of girls everywhere, and women in our nation as people around us dismantle women's health care protections, to women of color who suffer disproportionately to get health care, to all the mamas lost to a system that so often fails what could be our strength and our incredible physical capability. Lastly, we turn our hearts to our earth, for which the natural processes of seasons and weather stability that we and so many other species and ecosystems have relied on for so long are shifting dramatically around us. We think of the people and creatures of New Orleans, out west, survivors of the droughts in the Midwest and the floods of the Northeast. Of all the people and creatures all over the world whose lives and livelihoods have been and will be affected by climate instability. I invite you to close your eyes. Take a deep breath, just take a second. I invite you to draw to mind one piece of this world that is breaking your heart open right now. And then I'll invite you to draw to mind a person or a being in one of the situations that I've named or in the situation that is touching your heart. Maybe drawing to mind a parent of a small child. Maybe it's the sea creatures, healthcare workers, women and girls. Just take a second to make a silent commitment of something that you can do. Just for that one being. Maybe it's send a note to your nurse friend. Maybe it's plant flowers. Maybe it's call your representatives about women's health. Draw your attention back to your breath, rooting again in the here and now. This beautiful, abundant, safe, present moment. Giving gratitude for all that we have. Let the corners of your lips turn up behind those masks, and you may open your eyes. Because as always, we rejoice over the exquisite beauty in this world, as small or life-changing as each piece of beauty might be. And now I invite anyone to come forward and briefly share a rare joy or a profound sorrow and light a candle, and afterward we will read aloud the ones online.
I want to light a candle of love and holding for anyone who is maybe like me, going through a time of conflict and transition.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Nelson. I have two joys today. One, to be back here with even just a handful of people and worship together is fantastic. And two, I got to go to the ocean, which is where I recharge my batteries. I got to dip my feet in the Pacific and feel the salt air and hear the crashing waves. And I'm trying to remember that feeling.
Hello, I'm John Young, and I have a great joy to share. And that is the fact that under the Congregational Life Committee this year, the last 2 years, we've had 9 Zoom groups with small groups that have been sharing and ministering to each other during this COVID time. And we have had over 70 people throughout this period that have supported one another and given care and understanding. Great joy.
My name is Merlin Ring. Beverly and I are pleased to report that our son Andrew has returned home after several years in Taiwan. He's taken a teaching job in the public school system in Kansas City, Missouri. So thoughts and prayers with him as he adjusts to a new work environment and routine.
I light these remaining candles for all the joys and sorrows which remain unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. Please join me for a moment of silence and then enjoy our meditative hymn.
I'd like to invite you to hum along with number 128, For All That Is Our Life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use. We build a common good and make our own days glad.
Our reading today is from Mary Oliver. Things take the time they take. Don't worry. How many roads did St. Augustine follow before he became St. Augustine?
I once was lost, but now I'm found. What comes to mind when you hear these words? I once was lost, but now I'm found. What do you feel in your hearts when you think of the ways that life has been so kind to you, so forgiving? When you think of the many chances you've had to try again, to be found, to love yourself despite all the ways you've flubbed or stumbled or even reacted poorly for years on end. I invite you to take a second as we begin to reflect on how life has been graceful to you. Now, to help us in this, because grace is kind of a difficult concept, I'll have you do a little exercise. In your mind, fill in the blanks. I once was blank, but now I'm blank. Tell a story about your own life, about an unexpected, life-changing gift that came to you. I wonder what words you inserted. I once was dogmatic, but now I'm curious. I once was addicted, but now I'm free. I once was powerless, but now I'm strong. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Take a second to just breathe that story of your life, giving yourself that kindness, that grace. And now I want to tell you a story about someone who not only experienced a lot of grace in his life, but someone who talked and preached about grace even. His name was George de Benneville, and he was an early Universalist. George was a French-born Christian who throughout his life evolved greatly in his thinking around grace. And I think there's something here in his story of transformation that can teach us about what grace is and how we can sense it in our lives as Unitarian Universalists. See, we actually can think of grace in a way that makes sense for our UU theology. We can have a theology of grace that doesn't start in that place of depravity. We can embody and live lives touched by grace without thinking of ourselves as undeserving of it, because you see, the historical concept of grace has often been rooted in original sin. Grace, in its most biblical and traditional definition, is, quote unquote, the gift of salvation from God, even though we don't deserve it. You've heard about these theologies of depravity. You've lived them. The theologies where you must meditate on how you are a lowly worm. A colleague of mine in the hospital used to always want me to meditate on how I was a lowly worm. And you know, I just never really wanted to. One of the main depravity theologies is the theology of predestination, which is how George grew up in the Calvinist tradition. This was and is a powerful way of thinking that divides and blames humanity into those who were predestined to be saved or go to heaven, and those who, well, so sorry, not chosen. Now, we can often think of theology as up here, but theologies are actually down here amongst us. Theologies are powerful worldly forces and have an incredible impact on the world. Now, these were the messages of depravity that George de Benneville was receiving, that many of us have received from pulpits, that many of us still feel the effects of. Predestination, for example, has been used to heap more and more blame onto those who are already suffering or oppressed, as if to say that not only do you deserve your poorly state as a woman or a slave, but furthermore, when you were born, you were predestined to rot in hell. That's pretty deep. Now, George really bought into it, and he hated himself. He, quote unquote, had visions of himself burning in hell because of what he perceived his sins to be, sins he described as too many and too great to be forgiven. And of course, all of his misfortunes were proof of his depravity, and his Calvinist ministers affirmed that belief. George once was lost. But lucky for him, he also had an active mind, a curious mind. And as children did in those days, at the age of 12, he was sent away on a fleet of ships to North Africa. And it was in the Algiers that George witnessed a kindness that he had never seen before, a warmth and a love from a group of Muslims who were attending to a member of their community who had died. George saw there a love and a kindness, not just about this person's life, but about how this person's afterlife was thought of, and that struck him deep inside. So when he came back to Germany, he announced to his ministers that he had experienced that life-changing gift of abundant divine grace that flowed through humanity. He told them, "I could not have a doubt, but the whole world would be saved by that same power." But that was apparently the wrong thing to say, and he was excommunicated. George must have felt lost, but he was indeed starting to be found. George then wandered Europe, preaching universalism underground, and fell into a deep depression. He was arrested, even sentenced to death for preaching the inherent worth and dignity of every person. He hid, practicing mysticism, communalism, advocating for the separation of church and state, de-emphasizing doctrine, and preaching that abundant love. But this life wore on him. And after many years, George fell gravely ill himself, facing head-on those deep fears about the afterlife, grappling with dread about whether or not he was ultimately inherently depraved, whether or not ultimately he would be found to have that inherent worth and dignity. When it came down to his own death, he met his illness with great unease that God's grace would not follow him after all, and that he would indeed rot in hell. He had to be spoon-fed and became like a skeleton. But get this part really gets me. As George de Benneville slipped away, his near-death visions were as so many people speak of them. Warm, golden, held, surrounded, until at last he experienced something deeply and profoundly comforting. He once was lost, but now truly he was found. Had been blind, but now he saw that even he was lovable, good at heart, that the world ultimately would offer him a deep grace. They declared George dead, laid him in his coffin, but then 42 hours later, George woke up in that coffin, sat up, and started preaching, quote unquote, the universal everlasting gospel of boundless love for the entire human race. Of course, people wanted to hear about it. This man had died and came back to life, as many people did during those times. And what he was saying made a lot of sense. So the crowds were growing, and it just got to be too much for the 1740s European church to bear. So he was exiled, and George described where he went as an earthly paradise, Pennsylvania. George was found. I tell you this story now because as we come out of quarantine, I wonder who amongst us has been lost or felt lost over the last 19 months. Maybe many of us have felt lost in the belief that the things that we've seen about ourselves in quarantine make us unlovable, that there is something deeply shameful, something we've done wrong, ways that we have failed that in some way damn us. For we all get lost, and we don't always see just how beautiful we truly are in all of our imperfections. And we, as the leadership of the church, and many of the leadership who's joining us online, have an opportunity right now to lead gracefully. I tell you this story on the eve of this unprecedented time of opening the church back up because people have been changed by the pandemic. People need support in connecting back to their humanity, to their own humanity and to each other's humanity. They need our belief that they and we can knit up some of the horrific and damaging things we've seen and experienced over the last year and a half. People's mental health has suffered, people's bodies are different, families have changed, either loved ones have died, or relationships are forever altered because of this time of great grief, anger, frustration, confusion, and loss. And so thus, we now have an opportunity to offer a deep grace to everyone. Now, our definition of grace is different than the traditional one I stated earlier, and it's different than George's. Because for us, the grace we offer happens in the way we treat each other. It happens in covenant. We believe that all people do have endless opportunities to come back into right relationship, to come back into covenant. And this idea of covenantal accountability is one of the ways we live out grace as a Unitarian Universalist congregation. It's not how we live out no boundaries. It's not how we live out wherever anyone is and whatever anyone does is fine, but to acknowledge that we are beautiful in our imperfections and that we are capable as humans of waking up, of changing, and of growing. That at our core we are good, and that we all will become closer to those well springs of spiritual closeness the more we believe in our own ability to transform and in others' ability to transform. I'll close with this. As we come out of quarantine, people are going to have changed, and some people who we wish had changed are going to be exactly the same. So our jobs as individuals and as a community is really to stay present to our own journey of being lost and found, and then to remember that things take the time they take, and that we can always give ourselves grace and extend that grace to others, knowing that we're all rough drafts of who we are becoming. We all get to be lost. We all get to be found. And in the end, in all our mess and all our glory, we have been here for 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. Blessed be, and amen. The work of the church depends on us. Our generosity of time, wisdom, and financial resources. We invite you to give generously to support the ongoing work of the church. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared values.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a soul like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. Yeah, 'tis grace that brought me safe thus
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. This time, let's have everyone stand as you are willing and able to hum along with hymn number 1074, Turn the World Around.
Your body if you'd like, because this one is a calypso feel, so get your groove on, everybody. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Whoa, so is life a batiwa. So is life. Whoa, so is life a batiwa. So is life. Water make the river, river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain. Spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit. Only can the Spirit turn the world around. Whoa, so is life a batiwa. Ha! So is life. Whoa, so is life a batiwa. Ha! So is life. Whoa, so is life a batiwa. Ha! So is life. Whoa, so is life a batiwa. So is life.
This week, in honor of this song, I invite you to notice how the world is turning around. Give it, yourselves, and others grace. Go in peace.